From the window of her house in the suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona, Emily Johnson watched her son Ethan playing in the yard. Her 5-year-old son was happily playing alone, running a small dump truck through the sandbox. As always, complex emotions swirled in Emily's heart. Since her divorce 3 years ago, Emily had been living alone with her son. Her ex-husband, Matthew Hamilton, was the heir to the Hamilton family, who owned a famous local construction company. They had loved each other when they first married, but after Matthew's infidelity was discovered, they went through a bitter divorce. Fortunately, Matthew was a responsible man who faithfully paid child support every month. Moreover, he had even established a substantial trust fund for Ethan. While preparing lunch in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Through the door, she could see her mother Barbara's stern features. Barbara was known for always being well-dressed and taking an intimidating attitude toward everyone. Standing beside her was her sister Caitlin. Caitlin was, in contrast to Emily, an obedient daughter who listened to everything their mother said. "Emily, you look tired," Barbara said as she entered the house, not even glancing at her grandson Ethan, and settled into the living room. "I have something important to discuss today." Caitlin smiled at Emily as she sat on the sofa. However, there was no warmth in that smile, rather, it had a calculated coldness to it. "Ethan, aren't you going to say hello to Grandma and Aunt Caitlin?" Emily prompted her son. Ethan shyly waved at the two women, but Barbara merely nodded lightly, showing no particular interest. Usually, both her mother and sister often took distant attitudes toward Ethan. Emily desperately tried to protect her son, but gaining understanding from her family was difficult. "So, what did you want to talk about?" Emily asked with a sense of wariness. Barbara placed the travel brochure she had been holding on the table. "Let's take a family trip to the Grand Canyon." "How about a 3-generation trip after such a long time?" Emily was surprised. It was unusual for her mother to make such a suggestion. Usually, Barbara was critical of Emily's child-rearing and would even openly say things like, "Being a single mother is embarrassing." Caitlin also agreed with their mother's opinions and repeatedly made condescending remarks toward Emily. "The Grand Canyon?" Emily was puzzled. "Why so suddenly?" "I think it would be educational for Ethan," Caitlin interjected. "And it's a good opportunity to deepen family bonds, don't you think?" Emily felt something was off about her sister's words. She had never heard Caitlin talk about family bonds before. Rather, she often seemed to resent Emily and Ethan. "I'll cover all the expenses," Barbara continued. "Hotel costs, meals, I'll pay for everything. I don't intend to burden you financially." This surprised her even more. Her mother was usually very strict about money and often refused to provide financial assistance to Emily, telling her to be independent. Yet now she was saying she would cover all the travel expenses. Ethan clapped his hands excitedly. "Mama, let's go. I've seen the Grand Canyon in pictures. It's a really big canyon, right?" Seeing her son's pure joy, Emily was moved. Indeed, it would be a valuable experience for Ethan. And perhaps this trip could be an opportunity to improve their family relationships. "All right," Emily finally agreed. "When are you planning to go?" "From next Friday through Monday," Barbara answered immediately. As if she had already arranged everything. That night, after Ethan had fallen asleep, Emily sat alone in the living room thinking about the day's events. She couldn't quite accept her mother and sister's sudden proposal and their strangely kind attitudes. However, when she remembered her son's happy face, she began to think that her suspicions might just be paranoia. Perhaps this was the last chance to repair their family relationships. With such hope, she fell asleep. On Friday morning, as Emily loaded a large suitcase into her car, she was still trying to shake off the uneasiness that lingered deep in her heart. Ethan was wearing his new backpack, his cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mama, are we really going to the Grand Canyon?" Her son repeated the same question over and over. "Yes, Ethan. I'm sure we'll see wonderful scenery," Emily answered with a smile. At exactly 9 o'clock, Barbara and Caitlin came to pick them up. Her mother was driving a luxurious black SUV. When had she purchased this car, when she was supposed to be living a modest life? Emily wondered but didn't voice her question. Are you ready? Barbara called from the driver's seat. Her expression seemed softer than usual. Yes, we're all set, Emily replied while taking Ethan's hand. The conversation in the car was surprisingly pleasant. Caitlin talked to Ethan and asked him various questions. Emily was puzzled by her sister's change in attitude, as she usually showed no interest in children. Ethan, what do you like best at school? Caitlin asked in a gentle voice from the back seat. Drawing pictures and playing outside. Ethan answered innocently. How lovely. Let's draw together sometime. Hearing her sister's words, Emily felt warmth in her chest. Perhaps their family relationships really were about to change. Maybe the cold attitudes until now had simply been a matter of distance. After a 3-hour drive, the group arrived at a hotel in Flagstaff. The hotel Barbara had booked was much more luxurious than Emily had imagined. A large chandelier sparkled in the lobby, and the front desk staff welcomed them politely. Mom, is such a fancy hotel really okay? Emily asked worriedly. It's fine to splurge once in a while, Barbara smiled. Family time is more precious than anything. After putting their luggage in their rooms, the four went out for dinner. Even during the meal at the restaurant, Barbara and Caitlin's attitudes were unbelievably kind. Her mother ordered Ethan's favorite foods, and Caitlin helped feed him while holding him on her lap. Tomorrow we'll finally see the Grand Canyon, Caitlin said. Let's start at the South Rim and visit various viewpoints. If Ethan gets tired, we can take a break anytime, Barbara added. Emily was deeply moved. The distrust she had felt toward her family was gradually melting away. Perhaps she had been the one causing her family worry with the divorce situation. Maybe her mother and sister had truly been thinking of Emily and Ethan all along. The next morning, the family atmosphere was pleasant during Saturday breakfast as well. Barbara ordered pancakes for Ethan, and Caitlin poured orange juice for her nephew. Today looks like it's going to be a wonderful day, her mother said. The weather is perfect too. Indeed, the Arizona sky was cloudless blue. It was perfect weather for enjoying the Grand Canyon scenery. Around 10 o'clock, the group arrived at Grand Canyon National Park. When paying the entrance fee, Barbara said, "I'll pay," and stopped Emily from reaching for her wallet. The first place they visited was Mather Point, one of the most popular viewpoints. Faced with the magnificent scenery of the canyon, Ethan exclaimed with excitement. Mama, look. It's so big, her son clung to the railing while looking down into the canyon. It really is wonderful, Emily was also moved. However, while taking photos, Emily noticed something strange. Barbara and Caitlin kept checking their watches repeatedly. As if they were concerned about some kind of schedule. Mom, are you in a hurry about something? Emily asked. No, not really. I just want to see other places too, Barbara answered vaguely. After lunch, the group visited multiple viewpoints. Hermit's Rest, Hopi Point, and Yavapai Point. At every location, Barbara and Caitlin seemed to be concerned about time. Then, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, her mother made a suggestion. There's a special place. A hidden viewpoint that tourists don't usually visit. A hidden viewpoint? Emily frowned. Is it a safe place? Of course it is. It's a place I discovered when I was young. The scenery is the most beautiful there, Barbara's voice had a confident ring to it. Caitlin also agreed. Since we've come this far, I want to show you a special place. For Ethan, it will surely be an unforgettable memory. After driving for about 20 minutes, Barbara turned onto a side road. Following an unpaved path, they arrived at a deserted viewing area. Unlike the official viewpoints, this place had inadequate safety barriers, and the ground looked unstable. Mom, is this place really okay? Emily became anxious. Isn't it too dangerous for Ethan? It's fine. We're here with him, Barbara took her grandson's hand. Ethan, come with Grandma. As they approached the edge of the canyon, Emily's anxiety increased. The wind was strong, and the rocks underfoot were slippery. This was clearly not a place for a small child to visit. Do we really need to take photos here? Emily asked again. Since we've come all this way, Caitlin said. Let's take a family photo. We rarely get a chance to take pictures with such a wonderful background. Barbara had already taken out her smartphone. Emily, stand a little closer to the edge with Ethan. So the canyon shows up well in the background. Emily felt a sense of foreboding. She sensed something abnormal in her mother and sister's attitudes. Their eyes held a cold light she had never seen before. Mom, this place is dangerous after all. Why don't we take photos somewhere safer? It's fine, Emily. You worry too much. Barbara's voice had returned to its usual intimidating tone. Now, hurry up and get into position. Emily approached the edge of the cliff fearfully while firmly gripping her son's hand. Ethan was afraid of the high place but was trying to obey his grandmother's words. Step back a little more, Caitlin instructed. Otherwise, your whole bodies won't show up in the photo. Behind Emily was already the deep canyon. One wrong step could lead to irreversible consequences. She finally became certain that her mother and sister were leading them to a dangerous place. Ethan, stay close to Mama, Emily pulled her son in front of her. At that moment, Barbara approached with an eerie smile. Emily, I want you to enjoy the view from the bottom of the canyon. The moment Emily saw Barbara's eerie smile, a shudder ran through her body. Her mother's eyes held a cruel light she had never seen before. As if she had finally revealed her true nature that she had been hiding for so long. Mom, what did you just say? Emily asked in a trembling voice. You heard me, Barbara approached Emily step by step. I said I want you to enjoy the view from the bottom of the canyon. Caitlin also walked toward Ethan with the same expression. The 5-year-old son didn't understand the situation, but sensing the adult's strange atmosphere, he clung to his mother's skirt. Mama, I'm scared, Ethan's small voice mixed with the sound of the wind. Emily shielded her son behind her while desperately trying to understand the situation. Was this real? Were her own mother and sister really trying to harm them? Why? Emily's voice was hoarse. What did we do to you? Barbara sneered. What did you do? Your very existence is the problem, Emily. As long as you and that child exist, we can never be free. Free? What are you talking about? It's about money, Caitlin interjected. Her voice was filled with hatred she had been hiding until now. About Ethan's trust fund. The enormous trust fund that Matthew established. Emily gasped. The trust fund her ex-husband had established for their son was indeed substantial, but she couldn't understand why it concerned her mother and sister. What about the trust fund? It belongs to Ethan. Yes, as long as Ethan is alive, Barbara's voice was cold as ice. But if something happens to Ethan, the management rights of those funds transfer to his legal guardian. And I've already completed the procedures to become Ethan's guardian as his grandmother. Emily was horrified. When had her mother completed such procedures? And why had it been possible? You're a single mother and financially unstable, Caitlin continued the explanation. If something happens to you, naturally Grandma would take care of her grandson. And if something happens to Ethan too, the remaining trust fund money would be inherited by the closest blood relatives. That is, us. That's ridiculous, Emily denied it, but deep in her heart, she was shaking at the cunning of her mother and sister's plan. It's a fact, Barbara showed a triumphant expression. I've consulted with a lawyer too. All legal procedures have been followed. All that's left is to wait for an unfortunate accident to happen. Emily tried to step back, but she was already cornered at the edge of the cliff. The rocks underfoot were unstable, and one wrong step would send her plummeting into the abyss. Mom, please. Ethan has nothing to do with this. If it's just me, there should still be room for discussion. Discussion? Caitlin scoffed. What is there to discuss now? We've already decided. If you and your child disappear, everything will be resolved. Ethan began to cry. Although he couldn't understand the situation, he could feel the adult's hostility with his skin. Mama, I want to go home, her son's tearful voice tore at Emily's heart. "It's okay, Ethan. Mama is here with you." Emily held her son close while making a final plea to her mother. "Mom, please reconsider. We're blood family, aren't we? I'm your daughter." Barbara's expression wavered for a moment, but quickly returned to its cruel look. "Daughter? You've been nothing but a disgrace to me. Getting divorced, becoming a single mother, bringing shame to our family name. Enough." At that moment, her mother placed her hand on Emily's back. At first gently, as if showing affection. But the force in that hand clearly had the intention of pushing her out. "This is your last chance, Emily. If you jump by yourself, I'll at least save your son." "That's a lie." Emily tried to shake off her mother's hand. "You plan to kill Ethan too." "You're smart," Caitlin approached. "That's right, both of you need to disappear. Then everything will become ours." The moment Caitlin reached for Ethan, Emily desperately tried to protect her son. However, Barbara pushed hard from behind, and Emily lost her balance. "Stop." Emily's scream echoed through the canyon. "Ethan, I wonder if you can become a bird?" Caitlin laughed eerily while pushing her nephew toward the fence. "Try flying." "Mama." Ethan screamed in terror. At that moment, Emily summoned her last strength to protect her son. She held Ethan tight to her chest and tried to distance herself from her mother and sister. However, the rocks underfoot crumbled, and the two slipped off the edge of the cliff together. "Mama, help me." "Ethan, Mama is here with you, it's okay." During the fall, Emily continued to hold her son tightly. The wind whipped her cheeks as the canyon walls rushed past before her eyes. Was this the end? Would she die together with her son? However, the fall ended sooner than expected. The two landed on something soft. There was pain, but it wasn't fatal. Emily looked around in confusion. What they had fallen onto was a large safety net that the national park had installed as a safety measure. To prevent tourist falls, nets were sometimes installed in invisible positions at dangerous spots. It was precisely this net that had saved their lives. "Mama, it hurts," Ethan said while crying. "It's okay, Ethan. Everything's okay now." Emily held her son close while shedding tears. They were alive. Both of them were alive. From above, the surprised voices of Barbara and Caitlin could be heard. "What's happening? Why aren't they dead? There's a net. Why didn't we check beforehand?" Their conversation clearly proved that it had been a planned murder. And that conversation was clearly audible due to the canyon's echo. Soon, a rescue team rushed from the National Park Management Office. A sensor that detected tourist falls had activated, automatically triggering a rescue request. "Are you okay? Are you injured?" a rescue team member called out. "Yes, we're both safe," Emily answered while looking up. At the top of the cliff, Barbara and Caitlin could be seen panicking. They understood that their plan had failed and were trying to flee the scene. But it was too late. Everything had been recorded. Security cameras installed in the canyon had captured the entire incident. Her mother and sister's crime had all been preserved as evidence. Experienced rescue team members carefully lifted Emily and Ethan, who were shivering on the safety net. Team leader James Carter had been conducting rescue operations at the Grand Canyon for over 20 years and had seen various accidents, but he sensed something unusual about this situation. Usually, when tourists fall, the situation becomes more chaotic, Carter explained to his colleague. However, the reaction of the two women above is unnatural. Normally, if family members fell, they would be screaming and crying for help, but they're clearly upset for different reasons. When the rescue team arrived, Barbara and Caitlin were already trying to leave the scene. However, according to National Park Service regulations, when a fall accident occurs, all related parties present at the scene must undergo questioning. "Where are you heading?" Park Ranger Sarah Thompson stopped the two women. "We need to hear your account of the accident details." "Accident?" Barbara pretended to be confused. "What accident are you talking about?" "We've received a report that your family members fell." Caitlin answered hastily. "Oh, if it's that, it's fine. We think it's just minor injuries, so we'll head home first." Ranger Thompson frowned. Saying they would head home first, when family members had been in a fall accident, was clearly abnormal. Meanwhile, at the medical tent, emergency Dr. Miller, who was examining Emily and Ethan, was hearing their account. At first, Emily tried to protect her family by explaining it had been an accident. However, Ethan's innocent testimony revealed the truth. Grandma and Aunt pushed Mama, the 5-year-old son spoke honestly. Aunt said, "I wonder if you can become a bird," and tried to push me over the fence. I was scared. Dr. Miller became serious and immediately contacted the park security department. "This is the medical tent. We've received testimony from the fallen mother and child suggesting the possibility of intentional pushing. Immediate investigation is needed." At the park management office, Chief Ranger David Harris was checking the security camera footage. Grand Canyon National Park had installed high-performance surveillance cameras at major viewpoints and dangerous areas in response to increasing accidents in recent years. "This is clearly attempted murder," Harris said while watching the footage, calling Arizona State Police Detective Johnson. The elderly woman pushing the victim's back and the young woman trying to push the child over the fence are clearly recorded from multiple angles. The footage showed Barbara placing her hand on Emily's back and gradually applying force to push her. And the moment Caitlin tried to push Ethan over the fence, until the moment the mother and child fell, everything was clearly recorded. What was most decisive was that audio had been simultaneously recorded. The latest surveillance system was equipped with a function to filter out wind noise and clearly capture human conversation. Detective Johnson rushed to the scene with his colleague Detective Martinez. The two were veteran investigators with extensive experience in family crimes. "Where are the two female suspects?" Detective Johnson asked at the park management office. "They're being questioned in the parking lot," Ranger Thompson answered. "Judging there was a possibility of flight, we've restricted vehicle movement." In the parking lot, Barbara and Caitlin were being questioned by separate rangers. Their testimonies contradicted each other from the start. Barbara claimed that, "My grandson and daughter approached the cliff edge on their own and slipped." Meanwhile, Caitlin stated that, "My sister tried to take a photo with the child and lost her balance." "Your testimonies don't match," Detective Johnson pointed out. "You were at the same scene, so why are your stories different?" Caitlin began to panic. "I'm confused and don't remember clearly." "Then let's review the security camera footage together." Detective Martinez took out a tablet. The moment they were shown the footage, both women's faces turned pale. They understood that their crime had been completely recorded. "This is a misunderstanding," Barbara desperately tried to explain. "We were just trying to take a photo." "Then how do you explain this audio?" Detective Johnson played the audio recording. "I want you to enjoy the view from the bottom of the canyon." Barbara's own voice was clearly played back. Everyone present heard that cruel tone. "I wonder if you can become a bird?" Caitlin's voice followed. There was no longer any room for excuses. "Barbara Johnson, Caitlin Johnson, you are under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder." Detective Johnson took out handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent. Your statements may be used as evidence in court." Meanwhile, at the medical tent, Emily was calling her ex-husband Matthew. As Ethan's father, he needed to know about this situation. "Matthew? It's Emily. Something terrible has happened." "Emily? What's wrong? Your voice is shaking." Emily tearfully explained everything. The attempted murder by her mother and sister, the plan targeting the trust fund, and the miraculous rescue. "I can't believe it," Matthew was stunned. "Your family did such a thing. Is Ethan okay?" "Just minor scrapes. But I'm worried about the psychological shock. I'm heading there right away." After hanging up the phone, Emily sat with her son on her lap. Ethan was exhausted and sleeping, but occasionally seemed to have nightmares. A week later, Barbara and Caitlin were formally charged, and bail was also denied. The prosecutor judged that this was a planned and brutal crime, and given that the victims included a young child, the danger to society is extremely high. Detective Johnson from the Arizona State Police visited Emily, who had returned to her home in Phoenix. He came to explain the details of the case and future court proceedings. As a result of searching the suspect's home, multiple pieces of evidence supporting the crime were discovered, Detective Johnson reported. Detailed research materials about the trust fund and procedural documents for becoming a legal guardian were found in your mother's study. Also, from Caitlin's room, we discovered a map of the Grand Canyon and notes marking unpopular viewpoints. Emily shuddered. Her mother and sister's plan had been more thorough than she had imagined. Furthermore, text message histories discussing this plan were recovered from both of their smartphones, the detective continued. With this evidence, prosecution is certain, and the possibility of conviction is also very high. That night, Matthew visited Emily's home bringing dinner. Even after the divorce, out of love and responsibility for his son, he regularly came to check on them. "Emily, this incident made me realize something again," Matthew said with a serious expression. "Family isn't just about blood relations. Relationships bound by love and trust are what true family is." Emily shed tears at his words. "Thank you, Matthew. I'm so glad you're here. I'll continue to protect you and Ethan. That's my responsibility as a father." A week later, in the morning, multiple patrol cars arrived at the mansion in the upscale residential area where Barbara and Caitlin lived. While neighborhood residents watched from their windows, the scene of the two being led away in handcuffs unfolded. Local media also reported the incident extensively, garnering national attention as a grandmother and aunt's attempted murder of grandson case. It shocked many people as a symbolic case showing the horror of family crimes and how money can distort human relationships. 3 months later, at the Phoenix District Court in Arizona, the trial of Barbara and Caitlin was held. The jury reviewed the security camera footage and audio recordings and reached a guilty verdict after just 2 hours of deliberation. Barbara received a sentence of 25 years for attempted murder and child abuse, while Caitlin received 20 years for similar charges. During sentencing, Judge Margaret Davis harshly condemned it as a despicable crime that exploited blood relationships and targeted even a helpless young child, an extremely malicious case. In court, Emily gave a victim impact statement. "I don't hate my mother and sister. I'm just sad about why money can change people's hearts to this extent. What we really needed was love." Barbara showed no sign of remorse to the end, maintaining an expression that said, "The plan was just discovered." Meanwhile, Caitlin broke down crying for the first time at the moment of sentencing. However, whether this was from guilt or simply lamenting her own fate, no one could tell. A week after the verdict, Emily accompanied Matthew to Ethan's counseling session. Dr. Rachel Green, a specialist, was continuing therapy to help the 5-year-old son recover from the trauma of the incident. "Ethan's recovery is progressing well," Dr. Green explained to both parents. "Children have more resilience than adults think. However, a stable, loving family environment is most important." On the way home from therapy, Matthew made a proposal to Emily. "Emily, why don't we try again? This time, truly understanding each other." Emily had been thinking about this for a long time. Matthew's infidelity that caused their divorce was unforgivable, but the sincerity and love he had shown during this difficult time were genuine. "Let's take time to slowly rebuild our relationship." That evening, the three took a walk in the neighborhood park. Ethan ran around energetically, occasionally running up to his parents with a smile. Emily realized that this was what a true family looked like. 6 months later, Emily and Matthew officially reconciled and began living together in a new home. Matthew deeply regretted his infidelity and actively participated in family counseling. "I lost you both and only then understood what was truly precious," Matthew told Emily one night. "Family love is more valuable than money or status." Ethan also adapted to his new environment, and his nightmares became less frequent. Sometimes he would ask, "Where are Grandma and Aunt?" and Emily would answer, "They went far away. But Papa and Mama will always be together, so it's okay." A year later in spring, with support from Matthew's company, Emily established an NPO organization for child abuse prevention. Her personal testimony gave courage to many families and provided opportunities to think about family violence and abuse. Don't assume you're safe just because they're family, Emily spoke at lectures. Sometimes, the closest people can become the most dangerous. But with true love, any difficulty can be overcome. At the state prison, Barbara and Caitlin were each serving time in solitary cells. The two were housed in separate facilities, and visits were restricted. Barbara continued trying to justify her actions, but in the lonely solitary life, she gradually had to face reality. According to guards, she recently often had nightmares at night and would say, "Emily, forgive me," in her sleep. Caitlin suffered from deep regret. In sessions with the prison counselor, she tearfully said, "I can't believe I tried to kill my sister. I was blinded by money and lost my humanity." 3 years later in summer, Emily visited the Grand Canyon again. This time it wasn't a family trip, but as part of her NPO activities, organizing a healing journey with victims of family violence. Standing at that terrifying viewpoint, Emily was enveloped in complex emotions. The memory of fear still remained, but at the same time, she realized that this experience had made her stronger and given her the power to help many people. "Mama, is this the place we came before?" 8-year-old Ethan asked. "Yes. But this time, let's enjoy the scenery from a safe place," Emily answered while holding her son's hand. As the sunset painted the Grand Canyon golden, Emily made a vow in her heart. She would transform past pain into strength and build a truly loving family. And she would become a light of hope for people suffering similar pain. In the distance, Matthew was preparing to take family photos with his new camera. This time, the photos would capture only love, not threats. True family is bound not by blood relations, but by hearts that cherish each other.